Good afternoon. Well, it is the afternoon here. It could be morning, it could be evening where you are. We just don't know that. But anyway, another big pair of speakers. Guy called Mike contacted me and asked me to take a look at his, these are the Ditton 442s, and I have a really good courier that I use now, so I can ship everything around England without any issues and at a reasonable value. The guy I use also puts them in his van and they stay there until they're delivered, so it's not really an issue if they're just put in the van like this, although when I send them back I do bubble wrap them up. But yeah, so these have come from London, and very interestingly, the day after these arrived, another guy whose name's just escaped me, contacted me and brought his 442s down needing a crossover rebuild, which I've done. Here's a picture of those. So yeah, it's strange, like buses, they just all come along at once. So cosmetically these are pretty good. I'll take the covers off. The covers on these, I hate them. It's like carpet and they're really thick and chunky. So Mike's asked me to recloth these, so I'm going to do them in black cloth, which looks a lot better than this carpet. So these just are on pegs and just come off. Huge, great chunky chipboard frame. So yeah, I'll be reclothing these. Let's just move those out of the way. And this one. So initially when Mike contacted me, he said he was very happy with the cosmetic condition of them, really likes them, but one of the tweeters was dead. These use the HF2001, which is kind of the later version of the HF2000. Pretty sure it's the same dome, might be wrong. I find these very fragile. They're a good tweeter, but really fragile, and I've had a number of speakers with these blown. There's also a fuse at the back of them, which is not the best thing to have in the signal path, but I don't know whether you can hear any degradation at all of the signal through it. Anyway, I did, like I always do when speakers get here, just initial basic measurements, and here's how they measured. So that's just their on-axis response, and as you'll see, one of the tweeters didn't work. And the original idea, because rebuilding these, you can get suitable domes. I can use the domes from the HF2000, but the original idea was actually to integrate a new tweeter and see if we could then do that, get a pair of new tweeters in there, and yeah. As it turns out, I checked the fuse on the one that wasn't working, and lo and behold, it was the fuse. I don't think the fuse had failed because it had been overdriven or anything like that. The fuses in these are, I think they're only 500 milliamps, something like that. They're good 45 years old, so it's just fatigue, fuse fatigue. The little fuse wire in there had corroded, and yeah, that was it. No issue. So then I measured them side by side again, and this is the comparison. And as you can see, they're pretty good. A little bit of lump and bumpy here and there. Crossover components are likely the cause of that. There's also a little bit of a peak at the top of the tweeter range, about 15k I think from memory. A lot of that's to do with the missing mesh cover that should be on here. That really does help. But when you put the covers on, that kind of negates that as well. So really they're here now for a crossover rebuild, a rewire, service the drivers, so the rubbers will all get cleaned and treated, and obviously the covers to be reclothed. But also, as you can see with this one, when you're pushing in on the woofer, that mid is flying out. So we got a big air leak between the woofer's chamber and the mid-range chamber. We don't really have it on this one. which would suggest that someone's been in this one, and where the wires go through into this chamber, the material, I think it was like just a glue, don't think it was silicone or anything, has broken away. Or the glue bonds have broken up on the chipboard mid enclosure, and that's letting air in. So we'll take a look at that. But yeah, otherwise it's just a crossover rebuild. Now the tweeters are working and they're matching quite well, and covers, and then they're done. Cosmetically, they're pretty good. Can't remember if I was putting new binding posts on these or not. I don't think I was, but we'll see. So yeah, really it's just a quick look at these, and I'm not going to do a part 2 or anything. I'm just going to give you guys a look inside, a look at the original crossover. I'll get the crossovers done and show you those, and then that'll be that. I want to show you something else quickly as well. Don't know how well you can see that, but this is another finished pair of my HA3 6s. So I'm building the cabinets myself now. I'm not using a cabinet builder. These are built with 24mm MDF for the top, the sides, bottom obviously, and the back. And I'm using my panel damping system that I've worked on and got right. So we have some very dense rubber and then foam on the panel. Really works nicely. The 6.5 inch woofer that I was using, the tweeter, but because I couldn't get any more of the peerless tweeters I was using as a super tweeter, I'm now using a Dynavox ribbon tweeter, which plays from about 14k upwards and will run all the way up to 35 kilohertz. So there's huge amounts of top end headroom, and that has worked really well. It looks better, similar sort of mesh pattern. Yeah, couldn't be happier. Obviously there is Velcro that runs around these as well, which covers up the fixing screws. This needs a few more coats of Danish oil, but yeah, the veneer's nicely book matched. These are actually finished in wild apple, which is a wood I hadn't come across before, but this is a pair, now these are finished, that are going to be what I call a mule pair. So I'll be sending these out to people that are interested in them, that want to audition them first, and hopefully get a few reviews on them as well. But I love them, absolutely love them. So my little HA3.5 is done. These are now done. I'm almost there with a larger HA3.8, which is quite a beast. But yeah, I'm going to do a proper release video on these in the next week or so, disclosing all the measurements, impedance sweeps, everything about them, and try and get them out there. I've got quite a list now of people that have contacted me who are interested in a pair of these, prepared to put down deposits, but I'm just trying to get them out there now, get some good information on them, so people are quite confident when they purchase these. Because, you know, as a speaker designer, whilst I've been doing it for a long time, I'm an unknown. I appreciate that. These will sell, I'm sure, for 1,550, which in the UK will come with free shipping. I'm going to offer a whole load of veneers, because I'm veneering them myself, so that opens up the door for, you know, anything really that I can get hold of. Rosewood, this wild apple, oak, ebony, all sorts of walnut, European walnut, all sorts of finish. They're always going to have the black baffle, black cloth, but yeah, there may be some more options that come along. Anyway, let's get back to them, because that's what we're here for. Right, so let me tell you a bit more about these. These are the Ditton 442. I would think of these as the second generation of the original, like, Ditton 44s. I think that was the idea behind them. They also did a Ditton 332, which is kind of a reinvented version of the Ditton 33. They also did a really big 662, which had a dome tweeter, dome mid-range, same tweeter, same woofer, passive bass radiator, so the same as the Ditton 66. Crossovers in these are much more complex than the original 33, 44 and 66. I think largely because this mid-range isn't particularly well behaved. I've used this before in some of my own builds, and I did have to correct it quite a bit. It wasn't just a case of rolling off the top and the bottom into the woofer and tweeter. So yeah, a bit more involved. So these use a big 12-inch woofer, 8 ohm, not 4 like you had with the T1600 and T2600 you'd find in the Ditton 25, Ditton 44, 66, that sort of thing. Whether the cone is the same as the later 2600, I don't know. To me it looks like it, but we have an 8 ohm voice coil on these, not 4. So a 4-inch mid-range, and our small, is it half-inch 19mm tweeter. So yeah, I've had a few pairs of, no, one other pair of these, and then 2 came along. A few pairs of the Ditton 332, and yeah, they're more substantially built than the 44. Chipboard's thicker. They're still quite a lossy box. If I put the spectral decay up now, you'll see there's lots of cabinet bloom, which gives these the warmth that they have to them, which a lot of people like, and so do I. I like that. So yeah, maybe not to the extent of these, but they are, yeah, pretty good. Also, the arrangement of the mid and tweeter, they're handed, you know, they're not just on one side on both of them. So yeah, much better. Big baffle, keeping the drivers off to one side, keeping these distances different, so we don't get any kind of augmentation of certain frequencies, which might not be good. So anyway, let's have a look inside one of these and get them sorted out. I'll forewarn you now, if you have a pair of these, when you come to take out the drivers, don't be surprised if they're really stuck in, because the gasket material breaks down and almost glues them in. The tweeter can be a real pig to get out. You really want to get the woofer out first so you can get your hand underneath and push from the back. If you try and pull on the front plate, this front plate can rip off and you'll destroy the tweeter. Mid-range, again, yeah, can be stuck in there, but just be careful with the tweeter. It's quite difficult to get out. So we have quite a few screws holding this in. They are machine screws, not wood screws. Some of these are a bit rounded, so I'm sure they've been out before. And this is the one, no, this isn't the one, which is pushing up the mid. Right, let's get this out. I normally try and pick them out from one of the holes. Okay, so how I got this loose was a screwdriver in one of the holes with a lot of sideways pressure to really help me pull it. Don't stick a screwdriver in the gap, you'll massively create a huge dent. Yeah. Right, you'll see how much chipboards come up with this, and that's what happens, they glue themselves in. So this gasket kind of breaks down, so that needs taking off, cleaning, and some new gasket material putting around them. Push fit connectors, boo. So there is our big woofer. I mean, the chassis is basically the same as the T1600, T2600. Obviously the front's a bit different, but yeah, quite a similar driver. Alright, let's try and get our mid out. I'm not going to disturb the tweeter because there's no real need to. And like I say, they can be broken quite easily. Like that. Just carefully, bit of pressure. You'll hear the glue bond break. And there's our mid. So these are 8 ohm. The Ditton 44, they were all 4 ohm drivers. They are marked with a little plus there, quite difficult to see. Yeah, that's our mid driver. So this is the same mid driver used in the 332 as well. There wasn't a 222, they didn't do a 22 version. So yeah. So we have our little mid enclosure here. Bit of foam going round. Big square in the bottom. Whopper. I'd say that enclosure is probably the same as we had in the 44 as well. Just nick my tape measure. Yeah. So we're probably 17 centimeters deep. About there. 15 centimeters. 15 centimeters. Alexa, what's 1.5 times 1.5 times 1.7?
1.5 times 1.5 times 1.7 is 3.825.
So 3.8 litres this enclosure, less the driver. So yep, right, let's take out the foam in the back. Piece of foam that wraps around. And there we have our crossover. Right, I'll bring you in a bit closer. Right, so there's our crossover in the back there. Big multi-plug. Two wires that go to our fuse carrier. And then we can take the crossover out. So I'll do that now and then we'll have a look at that. Right, I'm just taking the crossover out of the other one and this will not budge at all. It is stuck in there like you wouldn't believe. Little tip, this is aluminium, so you can cut a thread in the hole, which can be completely covered when you put the screw back in, and as you wind that in, 9 times out of 10 your threading tool will start lifting the woofer. But once you've got the thread cut in there, you can carefully wind in a few bolts to pull it out, or that gives you a platform to get a bolt on and lever it without damaging anything, just to break that seal. But this one is in there. My God, I've come across some of these really badly, that are really badly stuck in there, but not like this. So there are two crossovers out. You'll probably notice a few differences between them. Different resistors, or different types of resistor used. Celestion had a habit of doing that. These wouldn't have been sold as pairs, they probably were individually boxed and just pulled out the stock room. Yeah, couple of wires there that go to our fuse carrier. I will go through the schematic in a minute. We'll draw it out, but yeah, bit of correction that goes on here. So otherwise it's a fairly straightforward crossover, but yeah, in dire need of a recap. So we've got all our old electrolytic L caps on here, which again, I retain electrolytics on the mid-range and the woofer circuit, upgrade the tweeter circuit, and better resistors as well. It just works well. So yeah, let's have a look. Right, so I've drawn out the crossover. I need to measure all the inductor values, but as you can see, there's quite a bit going on there. So if we look at the woofer circuit first, third order, coming through a probably a big value iron core inductor, so it's probably not going to matter too much that that is iron core. Through into a air core inductor, and then picking up the positive of our woofer with a 60 microfarad down to ground, so kind of third order arrangement here. And then on our mid-range we come in through an inductor first, so that's going to limit how high up the mid-range plays, and then we have a 16 microfarad capacitor, and then into the positive of our mid-range. And then here we have quite a bit going on. So we have a 6 microfarad cap down to ground and an inductor as well, and then on the other side a 12 microfarad with an 8.2 ohm resistor in front of it. So bit of correction, quite a clever roll off going on there. And then on our tweeter circuit, sort of a third order part here, so a 3.3 and an 8 into the positive of our tweeter with an inductor down to ground. And then we also have this 1.5 microfarad capacitor with another 8.2 ohm resistor. So all of this part is sort of up here. So yeah, a bit going on. When you compare this to the 44 crossover, yeah, a bit more complex. Anyway, I'm not going to dive into it in too detail in this video, but right, so let's have a look at these inductors. So let's have a look at our big woofer inductors first. So I've stripped all the capacitors off of these, as you can see. Right, so our big iron core inductor on the woofer, 4.35 millihenry. And then if we look at the air core inductor here, which ultimately leads out to our woofer, is 0.55. Just make sure we are only testing that through there, on there. Yep. So we got 3.5, 0.55, and then we got this inductor here, which is the first in circuit on the mid-range, 0.6. Then we have this inductor here, which is one of the shunt inductors on the mid-circuit. We must have another path with that one, although I can't see it. Nope, wasn't on it properly. 1.5 millihenry. And then our little inductor on the tweeter circuit, 0.13 millihenry. Okay, I'll write those on the board, take a quick picture. Right, before I do that, let's have a look at some of these old capacitors. So these hold up really well, actually. The legs on them tend to break though, I find. Obviously that's really if they're disturbed, but so I'm not expecting these to be a million miles off. So this should be 3.3, 3.334, so very good. And the 1.5, 1.6. So yeah, I mean, these don't really drift. There's no reason for them to. Right, let's have a look at this 16 microfarad. Um, 17.7. So it's basically 10% out. So this is a 60 microfarad, which is measuring 70.5. So 6 microfarad will be 10%. So we're getting on for 20% there. This is an 8. 9.15. So 0.8 would be 10% on that. This is a 12. 13.2, which is about 10%. And this little 6. 7.27. So 0.6 would be 10%, so that's about 20% out. There's a bit more to it than that, but yeah, they are fairly out. So I'm going to recap these and I'll show you that in a minute. Right, so that's the one of the crossovers done. Hopefully you can see a bit of a side-by-side there. So I've used Solon on the Solon polypropylene on the tweeter circuit. Just pulls out a bit more clarity. Good quality resistors. And then we've got our new owl caps all in there. Yeah, much better. So I'm going to get the other one done, get some new wiring on them, and then they can go back in. You hardly ever see these tweeters with their mesh covers because they just ping off. And this is the paper residue that's left behind. So just colouring it in with a paint pen just tidies it up a bit. So I think a lot of people listen to these with the covers off. So once that dries, that will be nice and satin. Oh, excuse me, still got the end of this cold. People are always asking what I clean the rubbers with. Just isopropyl alcohol, and I condition them with this stuff, rubber seal rejuvenator conditioner. It's fairly expensive. I think a tub of it, that sort of size, is about 40 quid. I've had this for ages. It just keeps going because you hardly need any of it. pussycat. Right, so I've still got that cover to do. This one's all done. All back together with a badge on. How smart does that look? And then that one's all done too. So I'll give them a final measure up. Anything untoward, I'll let you know, but yeah, very pleased. Job done.